Salutations, my brothers. How we doing today?
Good.
Surviving the heat.
Yeah, it's hella hot.
It's hot out there in Cali right now.
Man, it was 113 yesterday.
Really?
Yep.
That's crazy. We
108.
ain't really got it like that out here in Texas yet. We've been cool this summer. We getting rain.
The wind been blowing, rain here and there, all that.
Come on back to Cali.
I went out.
Good heat for you.
I went out for a walk midday. It was like 2:00 midday. I went out and walked 2.5 miles. And look, you normally can't do that in Texas in the summer at 2:00.
That's your workout. That's normally your workout right there.
We're doing that Cali. These past
that's
couple of weeks, you sitting in the house.
That's that workout. Well, man, welcome back, my brothers, as well as the people viewing in, our audience members, to another episode of Braspective this week. We've had some interesting things happen in the news and life and things of that nature that has sparked some different conversations with us. Today, we're going to talk about a couple of things, but we're going to start off talking about accountability, right? When we think of accountability and we think of the Sha'Carri Richardson situation, are we saying free Sha'Carri? What we doing?
Free her? She played herself, man. What you mean?
What? Nah. Well, I'll let Jeff start. Go ahead, Jeff. You can start it off.
All right, I guess I'll start, man. I guess when you in the field that she's in, which is track and field, a sport, there's rules in place for everything. It's just like you can't, when you're running in your lane, you got to run in your lane, right? If you step out of your lane, that's a violation, right? Everybody know that when you run a track, right? She knows there's rules, and we're talking about the Olympics. We're not talking about USA track. We're not talking about college track. We're not talking about none of that. We're talking about the whole world, right? So we know our views in America, or some of our views in America, is marijuana is okay. It's a pain reducer, or it's like a stress reliever, et cetera, whatever the qualities are of cannabis. But when you're in that field, they're going to test you multiple times, blood test, pee test, whatever kind of test they do. On a global scale, marijuana is not accepted like it is in America. We even know in America, in certain places, it's not accepted. And you know, going into your job, and you one of the best athletes in the world. She's probably the fastest woman in the world. You cannot be using because you know the rules. You're an adult now. I can see if she still was a kid she was at LSU or whatever school she went to. You're younger.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, you grown now. You know the rules now. You're getting paid to be a professional. You got sponsorships. You're putting America on your back. She should have known better. Unfortunate. Of course, we've sent our blessings and prayers because she lost her mom, but she got to find another way to cope with tough situations.
I diddle all that. I mean, in America, you have the right to smoke it, right? In certain areas, as Jeff just stated, but she knew the risk. And on top of that, I mean, I'm going to go with the facts that shared. She even shared. Man, I knew I was wrong. I knew at that time period. And that's the other part. She knew at that time period I shouldn't have smoked. Now, she's obviously saying there are times when I could have. I just chose to smoke at that time period when I know I shouldn't have. And then she got caught up. And so when people are like, hey, they shouldn't ban her from it. It's like Jeff just said, it's the world platform. And the world sees weed as something that's illegal. So she shouldn't have done it. I'll leave it there because Jeff really he really put it to the exact words that need to be said.
I mean, rules are rules, right? I mean, that's what it really comes down to. Her situation is unfortunate. And we're in this tug of war in America where is weed legal? Is weed not legal? It's legal over here, but it ain't legal over there. You can travel with it on a plane to go to here, but you can't travel with it on a plane to go there. I just feel like we're in this tug of war with it in general. I would say, I think that had she had been drinking and things like that, that would have been more detrimental to her performance. I don't think we have any real research that shows that a person running a 1 and a 200 is going to be too affected by the effects of marijuana. But I do feel that it's unfortunate. We're watching a young kid here, 20, 21 years old, making some life-changing decisions. Obviously, like Jeff said, this is her business and her brand. So it's a little bit more of a sticky situation. But I mean, at 20, 21 years old, she didn't lose any any sponsorships that we know of right now. And I will say that maybe this is a life lesson that will teach her just how America is going to treat her. I think she's got a lot of swagger and a lot of attitude and things like that I appreciate in an athlete. But I do feel that all of this also was, to kind of put her back in her place a little bit too. And it's unfortunate that at the end of the day, rules are rules, and you got to abide by them.
Before Dewan go, real quick, that's why you got to be on point. You could have had your hair colored. You could have did all the wild shit you want to do, but you was the fastest woman in the world. And then after that, you can be like, man, I'll be smoking after you won everything. You know what I'm saying?
And the while before you go, sorry, it's fun. It's a lot of people were comparing her to Michael Phelps, and Michael Phelps was like, yeah, I smoked, but I did it outside of the time period I was supposed to do it, and I was a user in college. So when they were doing those comparisons, they also got to look at the bigger picture. Dude didn't say like he denied it. He was like, I did it when I was allowed to. And so that's the difference. When people are like, man, let her run. They're looking and then they're trying to compare it to somebody who got caught up. Two different stories. And I think that's another thing that, in my opinion, sometimes hinders the narrative because you're trying to compare them when they actually don't fit. So.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? Because, we have this conversation about weed, and I had this conversation a lot of times with people just in general. And I say, look, I have no issues with weed. Or marijuana and its use. Obviously, if you consume too much of anything, there's going to be a problem. But you must be aware of where you're using it. Here in Texas, weed is not legal for any purposes, right? They have some counties where they may have decriminalized it, but there's still aspects where you can lose a job because look, you smoking. I always tell people, look, if you sitting around and you ain't got no job, and you're applying for jobs and you actively smoking weed, that is counterproductive, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. You are engaged in a counterproductive behavior because I've watched people apply for jobs, good jobs, they 19, 20 years old in college, you get a good job, making $22 an hour, do the interview. And then when they get to the background check and they got to pass that P test, they can't pass the P test, right? So I think that when you're looking at the Sha'Carri Richardson situation, some people say, well, it's not a performance-enhancing drug. It's not a performance-enhancing drug. Well, the argument that I will make with some people is the removal of anxiety before a race. Doesn't that enhance your ability to perform well? If we're talking about performance in general, if you think about Ben Simmons, right? Like a lot of what they say, Ben Simmons' ability and his issues on the court is in his head, right? He has a lot of performance anxiety, right? So if Ben Simmons was to smoke before a game and he can hit all the threes when he's practicing or working out other places, why can't he hit them on the thing? So I do think that, there has to be conversations and understandings about accountability. I think that, she got on there at Sha'Carri and was like, look, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. And I think that, she took accountability in that situation. But I do think sometimes when we are out here, we're talking about free someone, we're kind of absolving them of accountability. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to make smarter decisions. And I think you asked me this 10 years ago, we probably would have had a different conversation. But I do think as we get older, we get a little more conservative and just kind of are how liberal we are when it comes to certain things and our views on things. I don't think she should have lost her Olympic opportunity because of weed, but I definitely feel like she knew the consequences. In her mind, the risk outweighed the reward, and she went for it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate she couldn't get out there and run, but like we talked about, rules are the rules, and I do respect her for saying like, hey man, this is what was going on. I did smoke, whatever. She took accountability for that. I do respect that, but man, you got to know what you have on the line right now. This is an opportunity to change your life, probably your family life, and
forever.
You know what I'm saying? Forever, and then build on your mom's legacy or whatever. You know what I'm saying? I know she had just lost her mom, so sometimes we got to just reflect and like, damn, should I really do this? Should I go left or right? And it's hard in the moment. But damn, I wish he would have just chose to go left that time.
And that's the sad part. It's just, and we learn right now. This is a perfect example of 1 moment decision changes your life forever. 10 second decisions, and I use that finger because of the race. 10-second decisions, and you change your life forever. So that's something to be mindful of. And then there's a bigger picture to this whole narrative of weed in the country that we live in. And the reason why there's so many like discrepancies on how people see it, because on one side it will change the lives of many, and then on the other side it takes away a lot of control of, you know, how America is. And hopefully we'll get into that as we move forward.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, to accountability, and when we talk about that, I think it shows up and it looks different for different people, right? Those that fly under the radar are probably able to wager and stretch their accountability more because no one's got an eye on them. But for those of us that show up with the swagger, pop our shit, and try to build our own identity within the scope of something that's already here, I think accountability is more important, right? Like we talk about this all the time, just in general, with us having this Braspective podcast, me being a Black police officer, my opinions being a little bit more different than what we've seen before, the way I present myself being different. There's a certain level of accountability that I have. Yeah, it's progressive. Yeah, thanks for correcting that. It is progressive. I would say that my accountability has to be, I have to always keep that in mind, right? Like there are people that I'm sure that I work with now or that I worked with in the past that aren't maybe always, you know, maybe understanding or supportive or whatever the case may be, right? So I have to juggle my accountability with the things that I say and the things that I do. I think just like you guys in your professions, we all have to do that. Like when you're on a certain stage in life, right? Whether it's an Olympic stage or whether it's just your Olympic stage within your prospective career or field, I think the accountability does become an all-time high. People in the world that we live in today is a world that loves to find something that they can scrutinize you about, right? So when you start getting to that level in life, I think you have to be very mindful and minimize the level of scrutiny that you take on. And I mean, I can't speak from her shoes of losing somebody. I mean, we all cope with, you know, death and tragedy differently. But, you know, I mean, 21-year-old girl going through the things that she's going through, I can see how she, you know, wagered some of her accountability. I'm just hoping that in the long term, she's looking at the same picture that we're looking at and how all of this breaks down, and just being mindful of that in the future, because the Olympics only come around once every 4 years. I think that's the part that's devastating, is that, okay, she's going to have made a mistake today that she really can't correct or get rectified even in her Olympic career till she turns 24, 25 years old. That's a lot. That's a long time.
That's why I said a 10-second decision. And I equated that to a race. The race that she runs in 10 to 20 seconds, she made that whole change in a 10-second decision. So that's something. Yeah. And I want to take a little further. I was reading somewhere else, and, you know, we're talking about Sha'Carri Richardson, but, you know, there's other people. So, and, you know, just to make it a little more politically connected too, you know, if you pay attention to what goes on at the White House, President Biden had to let some of his staffers go because of it. I mean, it's not really talked about, but and the bad part about that is these people had written down, like, yeah, I smoked weed, you know, back in the day, but now today, even though it's still questionable, you had to let some people go. Like, yeah, I'm sorry, you can't work at the White House anymore. So the inconsistency of this is beyond just sports. There's some people, like that was just said, people lose their jobs over past decisions from a while back. So this isn't just in sports; it's everywhere.
I mean, it's crazy, right? Because, you know, for me, although I'm one of those who believe that, you know, we should be federally legalized, and there should be consistency amongst all states and how that looks. I think that weed or marijuana use can be a problem, right? Like for those reasons. I mean, if you're so dependent on marijuana that it causes you to lose out on your dreams. I mean, I'm pretty sure someone who runs track, I mean, you know, we ran track, right? You know, so, you know, when you are a track runner in college, high school, wherever, your goal is to be able to race in the Olympics. I'm pretty sure she worked hard, put all those hours in, shin splits, all type of things that she had to go through. I'm pretty sure that was her dream. And to see that her dream was taken away because of anxiety talks more about mental health, but also talks about the ways in which people are utilizing marijuana to cope. And it's not necessarily something that they should probably be identifying as their primary coping skill, and try to find other ways that they can cope, because regardless if it's legal, then you're still kind of trying to disconnect from the world and your problems as a means of coping, the same way that people do with other drugs or substances, such as alcohol.
And this the reason why I think it will probably not be federally looked at, and they are going to have to go state by state, because of if the federal government gets involved and says, hey, it's legal, that changes a lot. People that's been put in prison over weed, now you have to reopen those cases and really look at them in depth, because now the federal government has said, hey, this is a legal substance. So, you guys that are in jail that serving these sentences may need to walk out. And I don't think they want to deal with that. So that's why I was like, this can go down a lot of different rabbit holes if the federal government says yes. Another thing to look at is if the federal government says it's cool, there's a financial difference, because right now in most dispensaries, you got to use only cash. You can't use a card, because the federal government won't allow a company to go, hey, we're getting our money from a drug that's being seen as still legal according to the federal, guidelines. So a lot of dispensaries would be like, wait, you legalize it, we really gonna get our money. And I think the federal government doesn't want to get involved with that.
I mean, they do. They just trying to find a way where they can make money off of it. You know that, man, we live in a capitalistic country, bro. So once they find a way to say, like, oh, you saw the dime bag? I need $2.
Right.
And then from there, you can do whatever you want to do. So once they figure out a way to legalize, to gain some money off of it or tax it or whatever they decide they're going to do.
The issue. They can't tax it the same way.
Can't tax it. So they're trying to, once they figure that out, they're going to be like, all right, it's good across the board. But
I
I
think
that
whatever methods were used.
Yeah, just cut me off. All right, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, bro. My bad. I thought you was
go ahead, man. Cut me off in traffic.
No, I was going to say that I just think that just like whatever methods were used as far as how they figured out how to tax alcohol is the same thing that they need to do about the marijuana thing. Me personally, when it comes to just dealing with marijuana on the streets and stuff like that from a police standpoint, even though, California is a state where it's legal, there are some things out there where you can put yourself in a situation where it's not legal. I don't like messing with that. I don't feel that it's something that if I have the choice on how I want to deal with the situation when it comes to marijuana, I'm going to always choose to be on the lighter handed side of it, because of it's just too much yellow tape around it for me. I think that it's a situation in which you gotta really really think about how it's affecting people's lives in general. Anytime we have interaction with people and we're putting a charge on them on any case or anything like that, it's going to affect your life in ways that, sometimes you can't really bounce back from. And I think with marijuana being such on the cusp of it maybe going that route of being legal and things like that, it's just something that I don't feel comfortable with on the enforcement side of things.
Ooh, I was going to challenge you on that, because as you was bringing it up, I was going to say, like, and just to bring that part into it, when an officer sees an individual with any amount of weed, is it still, and being that we're in California, so I'm not going to do it by state, but in California, is that something that's taken into account? Like, hey, we're in California, this person has maybe enough for them to smoke. Is it just put it away, go on, or could it still be something that somebody can be put in jail for, depending on how much they have?
I mean, if we're talking about the difference between, sales cases and non-sales cases, I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, how many officers you find out there that are willing to go out there and enforce things like that, though, these days? I mean, I think that a lot, no matter what type of officer you are, the looking for things and how to deal with stuff, or ones that, don't necessarily look for things. I don't think anybody really wants to touch it that much, because it starts, you got to look at it from the top too. Like, what's the likelihood of this getting prosecuted? What's the likelihood of people actually pushing that forward? And I think that you're finding that a lot of the, DAs in different counties and things like that, that's not really their focus, and they're more likely to, look the other way or throw those type of cases out too. But yes, to answer the question, all of what I'm saying is just my opinion, and it's subjective. You get somebody that's got enough for a sales case, and there's not proper documentation, a whole bunch of other things that goes with that, you never know how an officer might proceed and go forward with something like that. So it's still a sticky situation. And if we're talking about stuff that may put you in a situation where it's a felony or things like that, there's a lot of different ways like that could play out. So I mean, we're still in that space, honestly, and there's a lot of documentaries out there on it where we're legal but not legal, right? And it's a play with me if you want to, but if you do too much and you get on my radar, the feds, people will come in and there will be some consequences for that. So it's still a very, very sticky situation.
One of the big questions that I have with this, and maybe we'll have to find somebody who can really answer this for me. So I go on vacation, right, to Colorado. And while I'm in Colorado, I'm on vacation. I'm smoking. I got some gummies. I'm living the life, right? I'm doing the thing in that state that's legal, right? I'm doing that in that thing that's legal. Now I come back to Texas and then I work, and my job does a random drug test, and now I pop dirty. But obviously, the thing that I did at the time that I did it, it was completely legal. Now, the fact that it lingers in my system for 30 days, or however it lingers, whether, you're doing hair follicle and it could be in my system for months, like that's kind of seems unfair in a way that's to me why there has to be more legislation to look at weed and how different states are operating. Because 2 weeks ago, if I smoked weed in Colorado 2 weeks ago, and it's still in my system and I get popped dirty and I lose my job because of that, because I'm in a whole nother state, that should be unfair. Essentially kind of what Sha'Carri Richardson, the thing that she did in Oregon. And then as a result, but again, her situation is different. I'm talking about just the average American and us going out, partaking, having fun. And then again, 2 weeks later, now my job does a drug test. I shouldn't be on the cups of losing my job because of that.
But why not? I'm just going to push back and ask, why not?
I mean, I think simply because at the time that I've done it, there's a substantial amount of time removed between obviously me partaking in this controlled substance that's legal in the state in which I visited. So one, where I did it, it was legal. Two, the facts that you're drug testing me and you're testing me for something. Drug test does have scores to show, if it's a higher range, then that means it's more recent in my system. A lower number, then it's less likely. I think those things should be considered, and I do think that I shouldn't lose my job because when I did the thing, it was legal. That's kind of like
but
where.
Think about this, Dewan. Remember, dude was protesting out there, and damn, where did the lady get killed at? They was about to drop it. They was dropping down a statue in somewhere. He was protesting from the Bay, right? He on video protesting. He come back to the Bay, he loses his job. But he was out in South Carolina, wherever the hell it was, and they was protesting a little thing, whatever. He came back home to Cali and lost his job. So it's like if you fucking off somewhere and they find out you was fucking off somewhere, company policy says you and your black self should not have been smoking them weeds, bro. You can't do it. It's company policy.
And the reason why I was asking why is because, and that's where I wanted to see if it was going to end up, is that, and this is where I'm on the fence in so many ways. Like if you know the guidelines in one area and then you try to push them guidelines in your area, knowing that that's not going to fly, you playing with that risk. So unless you know for sure, like where I'm going and what I'm taking is not going to get me in trouble, cool. And the reason why I say that is the fact that, she was doing it in Oregon and you can't throw it in your bag and fly into any other state with it. That has to let you know something else too. Like I got to be on my P's and Q's depending on where I go. Taff alluded to this in various ways. Sometimes we push back, and depending on where you're at, you got to be conscious of, what you're getting yourself into. So, if I'm in Oregon smoking and then I'm like, dang, this is some good stuff, and I want to take it in with me to Texas because, hey, it's just where I want to smoke at. But then I land in Texas and they're like, nah, it ain't going to go. It's just the various realities in America. We're so inconsistent in so many ways.
But we're bound by a whole bunch of different rules too, though, right? Like you guys were already saying. My job has a set of rules that, controls the fact that, a lot of the way that I conduct myself. We're not just talking about engaging in marijuana and stuff like that. I'm talking about my job controls impose my conduct on how I proceed on in doing a lot of things on and off the clock, no matter where I'm at in America. I think all of us have jobs in which our conduct has to be monitored, and we have to think twice about how we choose to go about doing things, just due to the fact of that it doesn't matter if I was all the way across the country or across the state, wherever. My job is still going to have a certain set of rules that if we found out you partake in things like that, it could be consequences. So I feel like that's
but I hear y'all though, and I hear y'all. Trust me, I understand. I guess maybe just as a contrarian in the situation a little bit, I hear you, right? Because I do think that we have to look at people in general and saying, hey, what are you doing? Are those things that you're doing affecting your ability to feed your family, live out your dreams, to take care of your goals, right? I understand that, but to me, you know, we there's such a negative stigma associated with marijuana because of who uses marijuana and who've always used marijuana, right? Now, the same people who use marijuana are not the people that are now making billions off marijuana. So in my mind, it's like, what? Time out. You know, did you just become an expert on this once it was legalized? That's a whole nother argument. I think that we attack marijuana in the same way because of who is utilizing marijuana. Like, you know, when I think of like things that should be really, you know, policies with workplace things that should be like, you do it, you're out of there. What about sexual assault? What about like workplace harassment and things of that nature, to where, you know, a person is less likely to lose their job behind violating someone as an individual than they are violating themselves because they chose to smoke some weed. And that's the issue that I have now. I understand the way in which people use.
Let me ask you this though. You said about who's smoking weed. So in your opinion, who do you feel are the weed smokers? Like, or who do you feel is associated with weed smoking? Do you feel that it's primarily Black people?
I mean, of course, obviously, those are the ones that have been in jail for smoking weed. Majority of the people, majority of African Americans who are in jail for crimes involving drugs are there for weed cases. They're in there for weed cases. They ain't there for coke, heroin, meth. They're in there for weed, right? So this was always viewed as a Black person's drug. I mean, we could talk about the coke and crack sentencing guidelines and all that. So I think the belief has been that this is what Black people do. This is what young Black people do. And they do it irresponsibly, which to a certain degree they can. It always kills me when I see 4 Black kids riding in a car, no tinted windows, tags is expired, nobody got a driver's license, and they just in the car smoking, right? Like they just, so once the police put a call over, all of a sudden you roll the windows down, like you think the smell just gonna be just disappear. That stuff bothers me, but I do think that it's targeted in the way it is because of who does it or who they believe does it.
I mean, but that's the stigma behind it though, too, though. That's what we talk about, the stigma behind it. You know, right? What they should say. They never talked about the medical benefits of it. They was talking about being a dummy, not being able to go to work, being lazy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They didn't talk about pain relief. They didn't talk about what the one talked about, anxiety, et cetera. They didn't talk about all those different benefits, right, of cannabis. Some people say even the THC version or part of the CBD version portion of it can cure cancer, or all the other medical benefits that go with it. It's a list of them. We can go read them. But they never talked about that. They talked about being a dummy, eating junk food, and zoning out on the couch, and watching Beavis and Butthead. They didn't talk about the medical benefits of it because it was related to it. Huh?
Yeah, I was going to say, because it wasn't getting everybody paid in the beginning. Now that you get paid, it's like, oh, it does this and it cures that. And I'm going to go back to what Dewan was saying.
Before you go, right? We see all of these damn new prescription drugs that they're giving out, right? And then at the end it goes, heartburn, indigestion, diarrhea, might cause cancer, might kill you, you know what I'm saying? All these different, they're going to list them and it'd be like a million different things. But with marijuana, they'd be like, oh, well, you're just going to be a dummy. Or you just going to do this or that. It ain't like you're going to get heartburn, your chest going to stop working, all this other shit. You can't breathe no more. None of that stuff is associated with marijuana.
Well, I mean, let's just say even from the criminal standpoint too, like in my opinion, once again, in particular to every agency that I've worked for, I don't be finding a whole bunch of people out there that are highly violent, highly dangerous because they've been smoking too much weed all day. I can't think off the top of my head of a criminal report I took where it was like I was smoking weed all day and then I got aggressive and I, attacked this person, or I went out and committed this violent crime. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but I'm saying that the likelihood of me seeing that associated to the type of people that I encounter when I'm dealing with someone that's under the influence of some type of substance, drugs or alcohol, I don't see that translating into I did this while I was super high and smoking weed and things like that. And then the reason that I said earlier, 2 to the 1, like, who is this associated with, is because I'm listening to what you're saying. And I mean, I didn't really look at it from the standpoint of who's going to jail for it. But in my mind, when I think about this thing too, I'm thinking of the fact that the first people that I was getting introduced to as an association to weed in movies was Cheech and Chong. So for me, I've always looked at weed as like this universal thing. However, I will tell you, there is some I'll call it black trauma for myself, for lack of a better term. When I see people that engage in like the smoking out of the bongs or the pipes and stuff like that, for me, that's like it instantly makes me think of like crack pipes and stuff like that, right? Like, so I don't know. For me, but I don't necessarily see a whole bunch of Black people that engage in the glass pipes and stuff like that. It's more of the blunt rolling and stuff like that. So for me, this thing that we're talking about it feels and seems like it is universal and stuff like that. It just feels and seems that way to me from my view on it.
I mean, I think it is universal in the sense that obviously there's a lot of people who are acceptance of weed in a sense. I also think that a lot of studies show, that the age of 80% of Americans of age 55 and younger have said that they have at least tried marijuana at least once, right? So that's 80% of our country have said that they've tried weed. So I think that people smoke weed. I think that people use weed. I have a lot of, people that I meet that are very professional, handling their business. And I'm surprised when I find out they smoke weed. Now, they're not smoking it through blunt. Through a blunt, they may have edibles, or they may, like you said, have a bong, or they may use a little with the little e-cigarette pin things or whatever. But they still are engaging in some type of use of marijuana. I think, though, the way in which society told us 20 years ago who was using weed was African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and things of that nature, right? And two, if you look at it on a political side, then there's a belief that liberals are more likely to engage in marijuana use than conservatives, and I would disagree with that as well. I think that if you think of people that vote on one side of the fence, people that particularly vote Republican, a lot of these people live in rural America. Man, it's all type of illegal activities that go on in rural America that people aren't aware of, right? If you look at most of your states, when you look into the inner city where your blacks and your browns and it's diverse, your metro, that's where a lot of those areas tend to be blue. When you go out into those wooded areas and those rural areas, that's where it gets red. There's all type of bodies and all type of criminal activity that happen in those areas that people kind of turn a blind eye to, but they don't turn a blind eye to when African Americans engage in stuff. There ain't no turning no blind eye.
And I think that's the part that you're hitting the nail on the head, if you want to use that term, is it's personified when a certain population of people are using it. I mean, that's just the storyline. Taff just alluded to it. We had a whole album called The Chronic. And then from there, it's like, oh, it's a black thing, and then you hear a majority of blacks referring to it. I mean, it's not that, let me take that back. You hear it in social media and how it's portrayed that a lot of blacks are engaged with it. And that's the sad piece. So who's telling the story? It's who's telling the story that makes it seem like only one certain population or unit or one area of the population are using it. Whereas when you like you said, you go to some of these other rural areas, I've seen some very predominant Caucasian people in their backyards during their barbecues being like, hey, we're going to go over to the corner and smoke. And you're like, wow, I didn't know y'all did that over here. It happened.
I'm going to tell you something, right? Worked for the state of Texas, right, for 10 years. Y'all think we drug test or what?
Hell yeah.
Nah, of course not.
Nope.
No, hell no. Hell no.
From the lowest to the bottom, everybody for the state, right? So that means Abbott, that means your judges, everybody got to get tested. You think they're getting tested, bro?
Nah.
Hell no. So they can't test.
I put it like that. Yeah.
But
You
they're
see
not
what I'm
looking
saying?
for weed. They're not looking for weed. There's
I'm
something else in there.
talking about any test.
Talking about
Yeah,
anything. They ain't tested.
That's what I'm saying.
They ain't
No,
tested for
nothing.
cooking.
I'm feeling you because they don't want to pull up what they gonna find. They're not gonna
You
find
know
weed.
who's gonna be the ones that fail? Be the people in the power positions, man. And you know they doing the cocoa. You know why? Because it's 3 days out your system, right? So if
Yeah.
they really go to the test over the weekend, it was Monday, Tuesday, they good. It's gone now. At that
We
point.
can have some conversations about that and stories I've heard associated with that, but I don't want nobody looking for me and talking crazy to me about that, because I've heard some wild stories when it comes to the cocaine uses and things like that. I just feel when it comes to marijuana in general, I personally would like to see it drop from all testing processes when it comes to drugs and stuff like that. Even if we're not going to go with legalization of it, I think that we're in such a 50-50 like tug of war type of situation. Just drop it from the test results. You know, I don't feel that it's something that we should. If you want to test somebody on the job, there's somebody out there. We came out with a vaccine for COVID in damn near a year. Somebody out there needs to come up with an instantaneous test that tells you on the spot somebody is under the influence right then and there. If that's what you're talking about in a work situation.
They got them.
Nah.
But that's a violation of their privacy. But they have those kind of tests. I think it's a violation of their privacy. But
I disagree. Some of these damn jobs need to be testing. Taff, your job, they need to be testing you fools for all type of shit.
you got a gun.
Your pilot, your bus driver, anybody who operates any means of public transportation or operate any heavy machinery or things that can be deadly, they need to be tested. And they also need to be testing the federal government employees. They need to be testing people. They need to test these fools, man. Like it's crazy that the person at Walmart is going to have a drug test, but the person that's running for the governor of the state of California or Massachusetts, none of them people are going to have to take a drug test. To me, that is beyond crazy.
Okay, well let's turn it up then a little bit. Then, do you, if weed becomes legal tomorrow, do you want these people that you're speaking of, your plane operators, police officers, and everybody to be exempt from that? Do you want them to be like, it's legal, but if you have these jobs, you cannot partake in that?
No.
Wait,
hold on.
Repeat your question. I want to make sure I heard it right. Repeat your question.
So my question is, boom, tomorrow we wake up, bam, breaking news. Weed is legal. Everybody can partake in it, period, point blank. Do you want your judges, these pilots, police officers, firefighters to be exempt from that group of people that are allowed to partake in that?
No. I just told you they exempt here in Texas, bruh. They don't drug test us here.
I don't believe that your police. I mean, y'all police officers are probably not exempt.
Government employee.
So my question. That's my question to Dewan. Then my question to Dewan is: do you want them exempt from that? You didn't say that. He did. So I'm looking for clarification from him.
Look at what Don just said. That's my answer. If it can negatively impact your safety or the safety of others, it can be a contributing cause, then it should be tested. I mean, I think that when you are a firefighter, a police officer, EMS, you are a politician who has to make decisions, right? Decisions that look, it's politicians right now signing bills to continue to lock people up, to keep weed legal. I mean, keep weed illegal, and then they go hang out with their boys on a Friday, and then they go and smoke. Right? Like, well, if you want the world to be this clean and pure, then you need to be held to that same standard. I need to know the people that are voting against these things, then they are also not utilizing these things. Because again, as someone said earlier, we live in a hypocritical world where one person will say, hey, you shouldn't be doing this. But then, behind closed doors, I'm going to do it. And I think that's where we have a problem. I think there are some people who are on national media right now who are bashing Sha'Carri Richardson for what she did, but they are going to go home and they're going to partake in smoking because they just so happen to have a job where they are not tested. That's a problem, man. Like people, we talk about accountability, right? Like I'm one of those people who believe, man, don't be putting free nobody on your shirt, especially if they did it. Why would you ask to free somebody if they did the crime? So why
He's a
do we give
murderer,
people,
man? He needs to be in jail. He's a
He
murderer.
needs to be in jail. He did it. Why are we talking about freedom? But why also on the other end, right? Because we do know the media plays a big role in how people perceive the world. Why should certain spaces or certain people be able to make decisions or comment and discuss decisions, but we're not holding them accountable by testing them to see what they're doing? It's crazy to me, and it's bothersome.
I think that I agree with you on the testing, and as far as how they want to go about it, I'm here for it all. I mean, once again, I can't have it both ways. I say that I'm a public servant, so therefore I need to do most of the time, or I need to be willing to be flexible to go the route in which the public is asking for me. However, I will say that we discuss on multiple different levels, and you guys do that in your profession, about mental health and stress and things like that, and de-escalation tactics, coping skills, and things like that. I would say that alcohol still has a very, very, very alarming detriment to people. And we all know that if we just looked at it from lack of a better term, the whole hangover system, and how people wake up the next day still feeling like shit, may have to go into work and things like that. I think that that's going to affect performance. I think there's a lot of things that can be affected by that, but yet it's all still legal. So for me, it's like we've got a lot of, if we're going to start untangling things like that, we've got a lot of work to do, because there's a lot of shit out there already right now that makes this a very, very controversial topic on how you got to deal with those things.
Well, we do the same things, and it's going to make you have a hangover if you smoke it, or you feeling some type of effect after the fact. I was going to share in my personal job experience, I had somebody, and not for weed, but during their lunch break, they took a couple of beers, and I had to be like, yo, you got to go home. I got to let you go. You can't counsel or talk to students or anything if you're going to be in your office smelling like alcohol. Like, that's going to affect the way that you engage the students. So if you smoking weed, it's just as bad. So what I'm trying to say is it's going to take a fine line to go, hey, if you smoke or drink, this is the time period in which you have to stop before you come to work. If you have this kind of job, this is the time period in which you have to not do it. So it's either going to have to be some straight across the board, or it's going to have to be, like you just said, certain people in certain industries, if we catch you doing it, it's a wrap for you, because it has an effect on how people engage. It does it does change your mindset. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care how we try to dance around it. It changes your mindset. If it's alcohol, whatever, it's a drug. It's going to change your mindset.
I mean, but when we go that far with antidepressants,
why not?
So the one you at the office, right? You talking to a client, you just zoning out. They're like, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bennett. That don't fly, man. You can't do that. And that's not holding. That is holding somebody's life in hand to a certain extent, because what you do as a job, what we do as a job. But like Dewan said, a pilot, somebody, a train operator, a bus driver, a law enforcement agent, a federal agent, etc. Man, they got lives at stake in their hands. Right? That's you know what I'm saying? Like, I just was getting on the bus, and all of a sudden the whole bus just bombed because he was hot. The whole bus gone because he was hot that day. We can't do that.
Like Denzel, when he was intoxicated flying the plane, he did it. He flipped the plane over. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, what I'm trying to say is it's a full circle of a conversation. It's kind of hard to say, you know what I'm saying? We shouldn't hold people to accountability to, you know, to weed, because it's not like other drugs. But at the same time, you know, we got to be smart about how we go about doing these things, because it is going to change somebody's lives. It does make a big difference. It may not change how she performs, just tying it back to how this started. But at the end of the day, it does change something in our physical beings that it shouldn't be something that we can just run with at any time. It's going to be questionable. Our laws are not consistent on how we address it, and then it's not consistent on who can use it and who can't. So it's just another thing that America that we do that's just crazy. And the reason why I tied it to the whole world, because in certain countries like China, let somebody get caught with weed in China, it's a rap for them. So, you know, if you're playing a sport and it's on a global network, can't let it happen. Can't let it fly. It's a very touchy situation.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, I'm willing to continue the conversation and be honest. For me, I don't know. I don't know how we should proceed forward with it. I don't know if we should be taking if it should. if it should, I just don't know. There's too many different things going on out there. When we think about medicine, we think about alcohol, and you hear about people talking about I just don't have enough research that shows the long-term effects on how people have been messed up or affected by marijuana. If people are getting ready to die, their doctor will tell them, hey, stop drinking. But their doctors will, in some cases, prescribe or suggest medical marijuana to people. So I'm only speaking from my point. I don't partake in it, so I can't speak from a standpoint of saying, hey, I know the benefits because I'm a user. I'm not, so I don't know. But I will say that there's a lot of stuff in this whole situation, which I want to see some more instantaneous testing. If it is a stress reliever and things like that, and it becomes legal tomorrow, I don't know if officers should be allowed to partake in their off days or not. I don't know.
Weed has been around long enough, man, and we have the research that we have on weed. I mean, obviously, there's newer strands, different strands, and things of that nature. Weed has been around long enough, man. They know what weed does to people and don't. Now, again, there are some people that they can't smoke weed. Their body just can't tolerate it. You guys talk about anxiety and things of that nature, and yeah, people utilize weed as a means to manage their anxiety. If you can take this thing that helps you turn off your mind, keep you from thinking and processing your thoughts and your feelings and your emotions, whether it's because of grief, the loss of somebody, depression, anxiety, stress, things of that nature, then it helps you, right? I mean, true story, personal story, not true story, personal story. Y'all know this. In 2004, I lost my daughter. I was 20 years old. I was a sophomore in college, right? I had never smoked weed in my life to that point. And it was hard for me, man. I had suicidal thoughts. I wanted to jump off. The only reason I probably ain't jump off my damn balcony in my apartment because I knew I wouldn't have died. I was just gonna hurt myself, right? It wasn't high enough, right? You know what I'm saying? So I think though that in that moment, man, like I couldn't stop crying, right? I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't stop thinking about, as a father, feeling like a failure, feeling like I didn't protect my kid, feeling like all these things, right? So, and then I still got to go to school. I still got to perform. I still got to go to class. Although my teachers knew, everybody was new, there was some leniency. I still had so much going on in my mind, man. So, I started to hang with some of my frat brothers at the time, or I wasn't even a frat yet, guys that I knew who smoked. And I found myself, two things that made me realize I shouldn't smoke. One day I had a test, and I probably was about to be about 30 minutes of class. My boys was like, hey, you about to go to class? I'm like, yeah. They're like, how long you got to say? I got 30 minutes. They're like, oh, come in here and smoke. We smoked. I looked up. It had been an hour and a half. I was late to class. So I had to run into class, right? New smoker. So that means I smell like weed, all that stuff, right? I took, I took a test or participated in class, whatever. The last time, it was finals week. Got high, smoked. I had this test that I had to take. I knew all the answers to the test. I was so stuck because I was high. I couldn't get the answer from my head to the paper. In 2 hours, I end up answering only 5 of those questions, and I got an F in the class. And that's when I said to myself, no, this is not for me, right? But in that moment, it helped me get through that semester. I'll be honest. It helped me. Those times that I smoked helped me get through the most difficult times and difficult days of my life. Now, does that mean that everybody should be out here smoking? No, because obviously I stopped smoking. That same semester that I started, I stopped because it did hurt me, and it did hurt my ability to make the right decisions and to think and process information. And for some people, that's their attempt in exactly what they were trying to do. So I do think that we should look at weed and the benefits of it, but we should also look at weed and have an understanding of, okay, what's too much? Like, we know what's too much alcohol that you should put in your body. We should know how much weed was too much that you put in your weed based on how much fat you have and your height and age and things of that nature. Just so people are not getting to a point where they are at these jobs in these industries utilizing it and then are putting people's life in danger.
Definitely. I'm still trying to figure out my alcohol intake though. When we take men's trips, that first day, man, I think I be going too hard on the alcohol, man. I mess up my whole trip. I be sleepy. I'm tired. I'm asleep for the whole afternoon. I'm still figuring this alcohol thing out, man. I ain't got it down just yet.
You ain't woke up in no bathtubs or nothing like that. You all right?
Dewano, I want to go back to what you said though. Even though you smoked, you didn't forget about what was going on. That's the other part that goes back to that mental health that you was talking about. Because even though you smoke it, even though you may drink, it doesn't go away. Like you numbing you numbing that pain for like the couple of days that you high and a couple of days that you've been drinking. But at the end of the day, you got to get out that fog. That fog goes away.
Yo.
That fog goes away, and you got to go back to, damn, how can I now process? You've been slowly processing it high, but at some point when you get your mind right, you still gotta process what's going on.
You're right though, right? The long term, it doesn't help me. I always tell people, when you're going through grief, when you're going through depression, anxiety, in order to get to a point where those things aren't affecting you in the way that they are, you kind of have to run through it. You got to like go through it. You got to process it. You got to figure out what a way to work through it now. But in that moment, life was so hard. I couldn't even imagine wanting to get up and go function and perform the next day. So for me, I had to get out of my mind, man. I was in a dark place. Most people know I'm a very positive mindset person, you know what I'm saying? And when I tell somebody that story, that I've at some point in my life had a moment of contemplating not being here anymore, they're surprised, because I've never ever had those type of thoughts again, because they're so far removed from who I am as a person. So that shows you what grief can do to people. You lose your mom, right? Like Sha'Carri, you lose your mom. I can imagine, man, that can be very, very difficult. Think about all the people who are smoking right now because they've lost 6, 7, 8, 9 family members due to COVID. So it's something that, again, in order for us to really go about figuring out how people should or shouldn't be using it, we need to get away from this negative stigma associated with it. So then we can put in the proper rules, the proper regulations, and the proper guidelines so people can use it responsibly. I also believe that a lot of people only use it because they're not supposed to. A lot of times once you make things legal, people, there's no thrill associated with it anymore, saying like, well, shit, it's legal, everybody doing it, so I'm on to the next stupid, dumb, illegal drug. I'm gonna start inhaling some freaking paint thinner or something.
Well, do you feel that it's I mean, there's two things I was going to say. The first thing is that it's hot in these streets right now. Like, violent crimes are at an all-time high. So to meet people that are, like you said, dealing with grief or the loss of people right now, let's just say we got COVID out there, and I'm just talking about even violence right now. Like, it's at an all-time high. It's a lot of that going on. But the other thing is with that, right, for those people that are partaking or that do go that route, and you kind of alluded to it a second ago, do we feel that marijuana, or do you guys, I'll pose it to the group, do we feel that it is a gateway drug? A lot of people talk about gateway drugs and things like that. Do you think that leads you to perish? And this is where I just seen everybody head do something differently. Who feels that it is a gateway? No.
To be honest, I don't feel like that. I feel like people be like, well, you try this, you're going to do that. Because I wasn't around people that did this, that. All I know is people that smoke weed.
Yeah.
If you're around people that just do cocaine, then you're going to be doing cocaine. You ain't going to be doing cocaine and weed because they just doing cocaine. So it's just, you know what I'm saying? It's depending on the environment. I think when they talk about it being a gateway drug, I don't think that's really true. I think that was another stigma attached to marijuana to get people to stay away from it. Or if you do it, these are the consequences. You're going to end up on heroin. That ain't the same.
How did they get to meth? How did people get to meth? What was the gateway to meth? Like, where did people start that got on the meth? Like, because I don't know, because I don't know a lot of.
You know where it started? The backwoods. The backwoods where you was talking about, where nobody had, they don't had nothing to do. They was mixing hella shit just in the kitchen, just mixing shit, all the chemicals, and they made meth.
I'm gonna be on the different side of this though, because that first high is never like the next high. So I know people.
How you know? What controls?
If you let me finish talking, I'll let you know.
Hey, he was doing the liquor on the tampon in his booty hole. He was doing that drug.
No, I don't know about that one. I'm gonna just say this. I don't know about that one. I don't know about that, but I'm gonna say this. And growing up where I grew up, you'll see somebody be like, "Oh, they smoke weed for the first time," and then they'll be like, "Well, have you had this weed that's been laced? Oh, well, let me try that." And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, snap, that high was not the high that I ever had before. And it leads to other highs. I'm just saying, I watched it happen. That one person, oh, it was just smoking weed. And then I had a different kind. And then I had a different type of weed. Oh, snap, let me try something that's a little more stronger. And next thing you know, they're chasing something that's just not right. And mentally, and you both being therapists, addictive behaviors are addictive behaviors. So if that's your addiction, it becomes something else more. And mentally, you're not able to deal with it. So you're like, let me try something else. And I need a help. I just know how to get it. And this is the help I think I'm going to use. So yeah, I think
more people die from sugar addiction than weed anything in this world.
That means you a goner. You have to be gone.
You can say any way you want to, but that's my argument to saying that weed can lead to more. People that you got functioning alcoholics. So why couldn't you have people that have other kind of drug addictions that they just can maneuver while they're on it, and you just try something stronger? Why should it happen?
Let me jump in and challenge on this level though. Number one, okay, I don't agree with the addictive, like it's a gateway, right? I mean, alcohol. The only reason that I'm not drinking Pavlov and plastic bottles is because I have more money in my pocket, so therefore I drink a higher quality of alcohol when I do partake in alcohol. But that doesn't mean that I'm trying to drink more of it to chase. Like that's you though. Your question was, does it have an addictive? Can it lead to? Can it be a gateway drug? And I'm saying yes.
Okay, all right. So from that standpoint, then you can be addicted to water drinking. From that standpoint,
so what are you at some point in time you started engaging in sexual activity in your life? Are you looking for the first one, or are you trying more off the wall shit? I don't know what. What are we talking about?
Y'all, go ahead. Y'all can play like you don't understand, but both of y'all mental health. There's people out there that are mentally damaged, and once they try one drug, they're like, "Oh snap, let me try another one. Oh snap, let me try another one."
Okay,
but they need help. It's a gateway drug.
That's a group of people.
What about the people? What about the people who are addicted to sex? Are we telling them not to have sex anymore? I understand what you're saying.
You're gonna tell them, but you're gonna teach them how to moderate, and how you're gonna teach them moderation, and you're gonna teach them how to deal with that. Come on, man. Stop playing. People. You're gonna be like, yo, you addicted to it, and you missing work. Like, let's really focus on what you need to do so that you don't miss work. You addicted to it it's affecting your relationship. Let's really talk about how to better affect your relationships. Like, y'all really playing if y'all not saying people can't.
Okay. We did go a little left, but I don't think we went too far left. What I'm saying is this. I think that is a certain group of people that qualify for what you're saying. Everybody that partakes in these things doesn't mean that they're going to go and rocket off into that.
That's true, but that wasn't your point. You didn't say, do some people. You said, is it a gateway? Yes, it is.
So what are we saying? Anything can be progressive in nature then. So
we know that, but that's something that we know. Anything you do, if you do it more, it can't turn into more. We know that.
He playing unfair because he's taking it for the literal sense as,
I'm taking from what I've seen. You can't tell me my truth. If I've seen it happen, you've seen it happen.
No. What I'm saying is, if you're speaking literally, does your exposure to this thing and you find out you like it make it more likely that you want more of that thing? Yeah, but we're not talking about is it a gateway to more weed, or are we talking about is it a gateway to crack, heroin?
It could be.
Or booty tampon. Alcohol.
So you're telling me? Wait. Let me throw it this way. So if somebody's a client, they walk into your office, and you like, hey, give me your breakdown. They're like, man, I'm addicted on something, and then you're like, all right, break me down. What happened in your life? And they start telling you their story, and they're like, well, when I got, one time when I was younger, this happened to me, and I started smoking weed with my family, and then other trauma happened to me, so I turned to this. And in your mind, you're gonna be like, damn it, it all started with when you went through that first trauma and you smoked that weed. That's where it kind of started. And then it started to build. I'm not just saying everything could be, but when you ask a question that way, could it turn into? Yes, it can. If not controlled, if not addressed, it can.
Hey, Perry,
the Gary Hive didn't try
being literal. Right. He using his PhD be all literal. Like 80% of the people ain't gonna turn to from going from being smoky to smoking heroin. They was just smoking straight.
Smokey knew he couldn't sell it. Smokey said he couldn't sell it. I smoke weed.
You saying people turning from smoky to pookie, and I'm just not gonna fucking agree with that. Okay.
All right. You don't have to. You don't have to. But it's the truth.
No, all I'm saying is this: if you go from smoky to pookie, more than likely you had some people around you that was playing with pookie, right? So is that, or is it that just that you're within your environment, you had a certain amount of drugs that was already in that circle that you could choose to play from, right? Like if I got people around me that's only smoking weed, what's the likelihood I'm going to start?
You're telling me if somebody knows how to get weed, they don't know how to get any other drugs?
What makes you want to go into that though? Is what we're saying though.
But you didn't answer my question. If I know how to get weed, can I not know how to get other drugs?
Can I answer that? I don't do drugs, but I'm pretty sure that if I wanted to get some marijuana, I can just ask a young person, and they probably can point me in the direction of where to go to get some marijuana. I don't know who to ask for meth or crack or heroin.
But you don't think they know a circle of like, well, if I know how to get one drug, I can't get other drugs.
No, what I'm saying is like I think you can go to a reasonable amount of younger people and ask, "Hey, what a weed man at?" And then they can point you to a weed man. I don't know if that same group of younger people with that maybe within the normal.
Y'all grew up in Richmond. Y'all grew up in Richmond and Vallejo. You're telling me y'all know a 6 degrees of separation.
Don't be speaking on Richmond like that.
Come on, man.
First of all, I'm not from Richmond.
All right, okay.
But the whole point is don't be classifying a city like that, all right? For you not being able to come out here.
Yeah, that's a good point. Why did you bring up our city?
I grew up in I'll bring up New Jersey. I grew up in New Jersey, and I know that if you're in the inner city and you know how to get to the weed man gonna know how to get to somebody else.
Yeah, you grew up in New Jersey where they was out there stealing cars and shit. That don't mean I seen you driving from your expedition to a Bentley.
I mean, do you know how to steal cars? Do you know how to steal cars?
Why?
Because
let's talk about that with your gateway ass.
Y'all go ahead and play it down.
Hey, so driving a car is a gateway to stealing a car.
No, I didn't say that.
Because you experience the car once, then
why we gotta be playing dumb? Why we gotta be playing dumb? You done get out here disrespecting Richmond and talking about this. Why we gotta be playing dumb? Just explain to us what you mean by this gateway shit. Because
if you don't, and I'm gonna start with my initial point. If you have a mental health problem, and that's why I pointed to Jeff and to Dewan. If the person has a mental health problem and they smoke weed, and next thing you know, they're gonna keep on going, they're gonna find other drugs. If you know how to get to one drug, you're gonna figure out how to get to the next drug.
So the problem is the drug use. The problem is the mental health issue, right?
That's where I started, though. That was my first point. I said,
but hold on. Absent of mental health issues, absent of my mental health, absent of something being wrong with me going through some grief, depression, anxiety, something, right?
Okay, I
go to Colorado. I smoke some weed. All of a sudden now I want heroin because I can't replicate what I got that time I was high. I'm going heroin. That's what we talk about gateway. Yeah, it opens the gate to another more severe, more problematic
my first point was. My first point was.
I started smoking weed, so I'm gonna start eventually. I know that I'm a weed smoker. I'm gonna move on to heroin. Like that's what I mean by gay or whatever the drug is. You said if this thing exists, if those things exist, I'm talking about just the average person. Are they gonna go to that?
That was not what you said. Your point was.
Was it a gateway drug?
And I said it depends on the situation. And being that therapist, they're probably going to run into people.
I didn't ask you
what does my job have to do with it?
I never asked you if they had mental health issues. Was this where it was going to go or any of that? You factored that in.
Of course I did because you left it open.
I didn't leave it open. You opened it. You opened that shit. You opened it. I never said, hey,
you said, could it be a gateway drug? I said, yes, it could.
No.
That was my point.
You PhD'd me. You PhD'd me. That's what you did.
That's not my fault.
I didn't say shit about none of these psychological. I could have put all
know your question. Know your question before you answer it.
That hypothesis is messed up.
He didn't try the PhD, and then he gets disrespected.
Ask your question before. Ponder your question before you ask it. You asked the question, I gave you an answer. My bad. My answer's right. Yes,
we just got to be very. We just got to be very literal when we're asking.
You ain't got to be literal. You ain't got to be literal.
You know what?
Asking.
He do this shit. He do this shit every episode. You do got to be literal with him.
You don't. You just, if I would have asked the question, if we got to take it there for you, Taff. If I would have asked the question, I would have said, "Hey, outside of certain populations, could this be a gateway drug?" Oh, okay, but yeah.
All I said was, "Is it a gateway drug?" I didn't say, "Hey, Parrish, if these."
And I said, "Yes, it could be." Wait, I said,
gateway drug.
My initial answer was, "Yes, it could be," and then y'all was like, "How?" And I told you how.
Y'all, hey, we can't. Even though this is actually what Braspective is, this is what we do in our Marco Polo. We argue about stuff for hours, for the sake of our audience and their ability to kind of follow what we're going on. I think that there's aspects of any if you have an addictive personality, you can get addicted to water, you can get addicted to swimming, you can get addicted to running, jogging, working out.
Booty word
ice. There's some people there
in water.
There's some people that's addicted to chewing ice, right? So to that point, I understand that. What I was trying to say was that there's not much research out there that suggests that with a large group of population or large population of people that's been studied, that the use of marijuana has caused them to engage in more deadlier, more problematic drugs. Now, I think that like most people, you're a product of your environment. So if you start using weed, but you hanging around a bunch of people who use meth, eventually they're gonna talk you into using meth, right? But if you only around people who use weed, then what's your likelihood of engaging in other drugs? I think that's very argumentative, and I think it can be subjective on what we view as gateway or not. But I do think at some point, we all have some good arguments and things of that nature. But we have to get our asses off of here for the day. What do y'all have to say to our audience or to anyone before we leave this discussion?
Man, like I said, we praying for Sha'Carri Richardson. She lost her mom, and I couldn't imagine that, right? So first off and foremost, that it's unfortunate that she would not be able to run, but the good part is she a young lady. She'll be back in 4. We seen Justin Gatlin come back 10, 15 years later running that 100 like he never left. I said Gatlin got to be like 45. Like he got to be 45 out there running. So you know what I'm saying. So hopefully she comes back even stronger, even better with more knowledge and can tell the young men and women, hey, you know what, I messed up, but y'all got an opportunity to be great. Seize the moment. Like that kid that's 17 years old that's going to the Olympics, seize the moment. And you know what I'm saying, go be great. But other than that, subscribe, like, dislike, comment on the Braspective page, subscribe. Be a good human, as I always say, man. Appreciate y'all.
I guess I'm up. No, I'm gonna say what I always say.
Go ahead, literal P. Make sure it's literal too.
It's gonna be literal because it's something I say all the time. You get this life one time. You don't get to repeat this shit ever again. This is it.
How you know? Because
this is the only life I got. If I die, I don't think I'm coming back. And if I do come back, my name will probably perish again. So fuck it. Anyways, this is the only time you get. And there ain't been no studies that show, hey, this nigga came. Well, this person came back. Hey, I'm getting too real. Anyways.
Oh, today was good. Today was good.
Like, subscribe, hit us with comments. You know what? And about this topic, we all make our own personal decisions. We only just giving you our perspective on these decisions. We're not telling you how to live your life. We're just telling you to live a healthy life. And if you got some personal things going on, seek out some assistance. Don't just rely on your sorrows to get you through it. Finally, hit us with topics that you want us to discuss. Follow us. Tell other people about it. Get the word out there. We appreciate you tuning in. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, today was a good episode. Uncle G said it too, accountability. Just know your audience, know your environment, be aware. There's a set of rules for people. There's a set of rules for your job. There's a set of rules for you in general as a person of color. There's a set of rules for everything in life. Know your set of rules. I'm not telling you to always play with them between the lines, but know the consequences if you don't and be accountable for those things. This was a great conversation. We obviously spoke from the standpoint of non-smokers, non-partakers in medical, marijuana, CBD, whatever you want to call it. If you guys know somebody who is in the field, please have them reach out to us. We love to do a part 2, maybe even as soon as this week. We'd be highly interested in it. And, just moving forward, until we can figure all this shit out, y'all, just say no, I guess. Hey, man, somebody need me to
wait, before Tab finish, just say no to down your beer next time.
No, I'm not.
Oh, he did it on live.
How he said I was sleeping the other night? I'm not dying. Nah, bro, I want to be useful again, bro. I was out here talking shit about Justin Gatlin, and y'all think I ain't gonna die my shit? I want to.
A viewer said, I just watched you guys' last episode of Braspective. His beard was gray. Now it's black. What happened?
He was sleeping like this.
Hey, this episode, I don't even know. There's so much shit that happened today that that's fine. I'm gonna keep on telling everybody. So shout out to my natural color, bro. This ain't Cocoa Midnight, bro. It's not. It's a different type of color. But seriously though, back on the shit that we was on before Jeff out of here messing us up. We love to continue this conversation with somebody that's in the industry. If you guys know somebody, send us a message, tag us, either us individually on our Instagrams or the Braspective page. And I promise you we'll have a healthy conversation with them. I'm not looking to put no cases on nobody. I'm not putting no cases on nobody. I just want to have a conversation that continues this for the people that are interested and do partake in it. I think it was a good conversation. Obviously, y'all got to see us be a little bit more of ourselves, and we're going to keep doing what we do.
Yo, so great message, brothers. I mean, I think that obviously today we talked a lot about, accountability in Sha'Carri Richardson's situation and marijuana usage. I think, we're going to have further conversations just on the weed industry in itself or the marijuana industry and how that looks. But I do think accountability is important. I think we have to be mindful of the situations we put ourselves in, and how people will use us as scapegoats to absolve themselves of their problems and things of that nature, or use us to punish, a whole people, a whole track team, right? Our track team was punished because of Sha'Carri's decision. And again, obviously with the loss of your mother as a mental health professional, I understand how difficult that is, and I understand that when we lose people we love and we care for, it can be really difficult to process. I would encourage the young lady, if she hasn't already, to reach out, find a mental health professional, things of that nature, somebody that she can talk to that's going to be unbiased.
She in Dallas, and you can do it.
Yeah, huh?
She in Dallas, you can do it.
Or whatever. Or I also like the fact that she was accountable though and was able to say, hey, she made a mistake. I think that's also a win for young people that she was showing as a young person. She has the mental fortitude to take accountability. So we can't, we'll be remiss if we didn't mention that and how she did take accountability for it. So, like us, subscribe, continue to watch. If there's things that you feel like we should discuss that you want to hear Mel's perspective on, be sure to inbox us, share with your friends, share with your colleagues, and we'll be back with you guys in a couple of days with a little more on this marijuana discussion. Hug somebody, love somebody, and we'll see you guys later.